Just a quick heads up, this week's episode of Battle of the Atom contains some strong language.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where normally we go through 3 X-Men stories and rank them on our big list of every X-Men story that's ever existed from best to worst. But we're not doing that for most of March because we have a ton of interviews. This week, my normal co-host Adam has decided that he can't speak, which makes an audio medium a challenge for him. So instead, we've got a great guest. He's the writer of Iceman. It's Sina Grace. Sina, how are you doing today?
I am aces. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing all right. Getting through. Excited to get this going because got a chance to get through all of Iceman, which is just finished, and been a really interesting, exciting ride.
Yeah, it's I haven't done the sit down yet where like I look at all 11 issues in one. But I'm really curious to see sort of like how it goes as like, you know, one long read rather than sort of these monthly installments or, you know, a trade and some single issues. So yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend for me to like kind of pull them all out and then go through and be like, all right, like how's the flow of this thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know we want to jump into some questions about, you know, what your thoughts on the series were and what your likes, dislikes, all that stuff. But first, I think our listeners would love to get a baseline on you. So, Sina, what is your X-Men origin story? What's your relationship to the franchise beyond writing Iceman?
Well, first and foremost, I'm so mad that I did not just come in and go boom, 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 boom when you said baseline. Anyway, but I still had to make the stupid dad joke.
Which is well reflected in your run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is me. So my first, like, I got into X-Men right around Fatal Attraction. Is that right? Where Wolverine gets the adamantium pulled out himself.
Bone Claws times.
Yeah, that was right when I started. Like, John Romita Jr., I believe, was drawing, like, Uncanny. And I just always loved the characters. I thought they were so cool. What's interesting, too, kind of, like, analyzing all the stuff as a grown-up is that the X-Men were just always such a like well-rounded, diverse cast and casual. Like it was casual that they were like this. And I loved that there were like kind of like 9 to 12 members in each book. And then as I got older, I went back and, you know, read through the Jack Kirby material because there were those Essential X-Men trade paperbacks or whatever that was like what for like $15 you'd get 200 pages. They were just black and white,
something ridiculous like that. I think that's actually how I jumped into the series when I was younger. Was I had the first issue of the Kirby ones and then the first 3 of Claremont's run, and I still have them sitting on my shelf right outside this room.
I remember even like it was sort of like it was the excitement I've only really had a few other times in life, like, and also the mystery around wanting to collect something. But like, it was kind of how I felt like when I started watching Buffy, which was like, I started between seasons 3 and 4 and it was before DVDs and streaming. So like, I couldn't find those first 2 seasons and they were this mystery to me. And like, I remembered this feeling when I was a kid trying to find a reprint of Giant Size X-Men #1. Because it was just, it was regarded as this like big deal issue where like so much shit happens. Pardon my French.
Oh, you're good.
And I remembered buying like an X-Men classic reprint of it and getting really upset because I was like, what happened? It said it was 64 pages and this is like only 30 pages. Like, what am I like? Is it a reduced? I just was like so confused. And then same with like the Phoenix saga. Like there weren't really collected editions or digital books that I had access. There were no digital books, but like I couldn't really find like a collected edition of the Phoenix Saga back then. And so I was just buying back issues piecemeal because they were expensive because it was a big deal. Yeah, and then from there it was sort of like Jim Lee was a big deal, and I'd kind of like find back issues that he had drawn, or that had his covers on them, and then you go home and you open the book and you're like, who the fuck is this? And yeah, and from there I just kept reading, and on and off over the years I just sort of remained an X-Men fan. And I've said this before, and I'm sure it's blasphemy or whatever, but like I ended up kind of following the artists over the years, and what was exciting about jumping onto Iceman was that I could kind of revisit all of these eras and epochs that I had like grown up with, and actually read them all the way through, because I was trying to follow the writers and trying to follow Bobby Drake specifically. And that was also interesting, was like rereading the series, not all the way. I didn't read like, all like 7,000, single X-Men books,
Sure.
but going through what I went through with an eye towards like, wait, what's Bobby doing in this story, and where's he at? And that was a lot of fun. I think I answered your question in that ramble.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to me, it's interesting to hear how people have gone back, in finding the history. Because like for me, I had read those Claremont trades when I was younger, and then I said, okay, this is all the X-Men I have access to. That's fine, and I put them aside for like 10 years until I decided I wanted to read comics for real. And by that point, Marvel Unlimited was a thing. And so I've spent like the last 4 years just streamlining continuity. And now,
well, you.
Oh yeah, oh, it's great. It's great. I have nothing to complain about. But it's interesting to see that, and then compared to some of the gaps they have in there. So like right now, I'm going through and trying to find just these weird back issues of late Excalibur just to fill out, okay, I know something happens here and I don't know exactly what. So yeah, no, I think that's a very interesting perspective on getting into the franchise. Now, were you reading it back when Bobby first came out in Brian Bendis's All New X-Men run, or had you fallen off by that point?
Yeah, no, I'd kind of come back in because I like Bendis's writing, and I was curious as to what he would do with the X-Men. And then what was so funny was I was just kind of like, oh, like what's he going to do with these time displaced X-Men? What's that about? And then it's like, I love Stuart Eminem's art. I love Chris Bachalo's art. So obviously that was a reason to pull me back in. Another thing I wanted to say about the previous question that I'm only realizing for the first time here on this interview is that a lot of credit for my X-Men fandom, I owe a great debt to like trading cards. Because trading cards would have like, like most important moment images, and it would be like, the time Wolverine fought Sabretooth, which time, and that helped me be like, oh, what this happened, huh? Like, and that kind of got me sort of hunting to find out more about these like really striking images. Like Inferno was just such a big mystery to me, but thank you trading cards. And then also the 90s animated series. Back to whatever we're talking about now though. Sorry.
no, that's perfectly fine. I think it's very interesting to see, how people pick up some of that information and bring it back. So for the you said you were reading the Bendis run. Now the big thing that happened there was, Bobby came out. That was one of the big things that he put in his series right near the end. What was your reaction just as a fan and as a reader to that? Because I think some aspects were well done, and I'm not against the change. I know that had caused some controversy within, different fans.
It's like, it just goes to show you never know what's going to be like a pivotal moment in your life, or, what's going to like it, it's not like I had no opinion about it. I was just like, okay, cool. Like, all right. And then I read the scene, and I remembered being like, wow, that's an incredibly like emotional like I could tell that it was like, you know, that there was a lot of effort put into it in terms of just like how to handle it and how to handle it honestly. Um, and the main thing I remembered was just like people kind of being like, "Oh, did you hear? Like, did you hear? Like, you know, what just got like leaked is that like this is what's going to happen." And I think
Hmm.
that maybe actually overshadowed the importance, you know, in the actual meat of what did happen in that issue was that it sort of ended up getting treated like a salacious bit of clickbait, and you know, just for that very moment, you know. And I don't know what it would be like for someone to kind of go through and revisit those, because that, you know, that was just my experience. But yeah, that's where my head was at. I just kind of, it was brought to me as like a scandal, and I was like, okay. Like, yeah, I didn't really, you know, I didn't have this huge relationship with Bobby as an X-Men fan, so there was no sense of betrayal. And then kind of reading into it and then learning sort of that fans had been kind of talking about this for
Oh
years,
yeah.
I was like, well, it's in the text, like, okay, cool. Like I buy it, I vibe, like whatever. Especially when you think of just like all the other changes, um, personality and body and otherwise, that have happened to these people. It's like, well, why not accept this? Like, you know, Betsy Braddock is like a British woman in an Asian woman's body, and we're
Yeah.
okay. Like, so, you know, it's just kind of like, okay, like, yeah, this is like the X-Men, like that is the book where weird, zany shit, you know, can happen and is acceptable and is speaking to like true journeys that we all go through. I think it's the best space for those kinds of like subtexty moments. And not so subtexty moments.
Right. Yeah. I think that's just, going through and seeing that stuff. It's been something that you can, even if, textually Stanley wasn't writing Bobby Drake as a gay man in the 60s. That's not what he was doing. Louis Simonson wasn't doing that in X Factor. However, with that information, there's enough, I think, overlapping things about Bobby not being comfortable in his own skin that you can weld the canon together to tell the story. I think, some people thought it was coming way out of left field, and I don't think that's necessarily the case as you go back and read it. So yeah, I think that's a real unique opinion on it. So
Yeah. Yeah, like I agree. I don't know. I don't think Stan the Man is like, yeah, if you read it, like Stan the Man was definitely not writing Bobby as like a closet case. Because back then it was a big enough of a deal to write like liberal
right,
youngsters in books. You know, like the book was like already kind of um not avant-garde, but it was already kind of like pushing some boundaries just with these like, you know, tenacious kids. And it was speaking to kind of like this like emerging college audience of liberals who really wanted to like, you know, say something and do something and be something. Anyway, sorry.
no,
Back to you.
oh, back to me, back to you. I mean, this is all about you. People get to hear me every week. They don't get to hear Cena Grace all the time. Uh,
Oh, that, I mean, unless they're just watching my Instagram stories where I literally do just like think out loud all day. But yeah, no, it was, you know, anyway. So yeah, I agree that I don't think these previous writers were doing that, but it's in the text,
mhm,
and you know, like it just speaks, it just makes everything make much more sense, you
sure.
know, like, and it turns sort of a character that was kind of like, yeah, just sort of like a background character. It sort of like brings a poignancy to it in IMHO.
Right, right. Now to your specific 11 issues on Iceman. That was Bobby's third solo series, but his first actual ongoing. The others I think were 4-issue minis. So when you got this assignment, when you were asked to pitch this, what was your goal with the book? What were you trying to do or say with Bobby as a character?
Um, I mean, it changed. It changed. Well, can I say changed a little more awkwardly? It changed a little bit, and I think the thing was like, I just remember being like, "Oh, he's like hiding in plain sight. Like, I can work with that." And I think I just kind of wanted to make a book where someone can be like, I'm not okay, and that's okay. And a lot of my like quote unquote emotional research, I looked into a lot of like stand-up comics, and people who work in comedy,
Mm-hmm.
and how they compartmentalize and how they use comedy to heal and to numb. And especially like I was looking at heterosexual dudes because just I knew, I'd be up against like people who would not sort of accept this book at face value, and I just wanted to kind of cover my bases, and yeah, and I wanted to make a book that was about a guy kind of like finding himself and forging his own destiny, and then that got really tricky because it was like, well, what is his destiny? And I feel like at the end of it, the solution to the whole series is like, who's to say? But like looking and asking the questions is a great start. And had I had like another year and another year, I think it would have been about how much he can be a leader and that he can be counted on and can be relied on. And we didn't quite get there, but I feel like I at least ended it in a place where we could really sort of like let this guy be the hero and save the day in future stories, and it would totally track and make sense. So I don't know. That was sort of where my head was at with him the whole way through.
No, I think that really shines through in the last issue, which I believe for the listeners will have just come out last week, number 11, where there's this big moment of Bobby having to help another guy who's finding out he's a mutant and not dealing with it very well. And instead of being, the jokester and the kid and all that of the team, which is a role he's often played, he has to be the big responsible one and take care of someone who's going through a weird situation. And it ends on a real poignant moment of, him kind of accepting that, hey, he can be this guy that everyone's been saying, Bobby Drake, he got so much potential. He's, just untapped. He's just not realizing it. I think the book ends with a nice moment of him saying, okay, yeah, never mind. I can be that. I can live up to that.
Yeah. I really wanted, that was the, whoever, I don't know. That story was like in my back pocket from the beginning. Like I was like, I know how this book is going to end, and it's going to end with Bobby helping someone come out. As a mutant, like let's just sort of like keep the metaphor rolling on itself, because that's the most fun. Mm-hmm. That Bobby would be so comfortable and so mature that he could help someone else come to terms with a part of their identity they're scared to face. And yeah, I hope I landed the plane. We'll find out. By the time listeners are hearing this, the internet will have had a reaction. But I'm hoping positive. I feel like that was just kind of like the best I could do, without ruffling too many feathers and staying true to the continuity, because I really did. I really did try and just sort of like make this something that could fit in X-Men canon and didn't feel like fan fiction or didn't feel like, something easily forgettable. Like I do think that middle Iceman miniseries, there's a lot of like weird stuff.
The one where he goes to Japan to take care of his son that turns out not to be actually his son. And then there's weird mutant, half mutant weird creations trying to capture it for an evil corporation.
Yeah, that one's
bonkers.
Yeah, and it also has get this, that's Scotty Young's first Marvel work.
He does a couple of the issues in the middle of it.
Yeah, because I like texted him about that. I was like, dude, and he was like, that's actually my first Marvel work, and I was like, whoa. He also did a cover for me, and also the fact that I said in a sentence I texted him and that was casual is also like, what? Anyway, back to the topic at hand. But yeah, I really did try, and I didn't want to make it like inconsequential or goofy, because I think when you look at also the first miniseries, like, what the hell are those bad guys? And yeah, anyway, so that, yeah, I just really tried to like, I just wanted to contribute, and I wanted to tell a story that I think I would have been interested in, like, actually not first and foremost as a gay man, but as like first and foremost as an X-Men fan, and like which stories like I vibed with. There was this random Uncanny X-Men issue that Joe Madureira drew. I can't remember who wrote it. I think Scott Lobdell.
Sounds right.
But anyway, it's just about them making breakfast. And it's just a great issue. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of character work. There's still a lot of like cool, X-Men drawings. There's somehow Joe Madureira manages to like give you like a boobtastic Psylocke shot.
Well, he was very good at that. That was
yeah, that was his gift. But all that is to say, like, I vibed with that, like, and that has nothing to do with like my identity or sexuality. That has just everything to do with like what I find to be really compelling stories with these people. They're a family, and they're all different. And I just love that about the X-Men. I love that they're fucking freaks and they love each other, and they're like, and being a freak is a good thing, Anyway.
No, so I mean, I think that shows in your work. I'd say the like the character drama side that you do with Iceman and some of his relationships with people, that's far and away the strongest parts of the book, in my opinion. Like the conversations he has with his parents or with Kitty, or like Richter in the last issue. There's a lot of very good character stuff that goes on, and I was curious how you went about balancing that. Which I've often joked that my ideal X-Men comics is a bunch of mutants in casual wear sitting around a table talking. But I know I'm in the minority on that. So how do you balance that with the 8 pages of fights that you got to fit into a superhero comic?
I do a couple things when I'm like drafting the issue, and I've said this a few times, like I will lay the book out myself. I won't show the artist because that's just like, unless there's something very specific, which throughout the entirety of Iceman, I never had to show the artist what my layouts were, but it's just to like get a visual sense as to what I'm asking them to do. And like, so when I'm done with that, like I will tally like how many pages are like a fight scene. Is there a splash page? Like, just to kind of get a visual account of like what this comic book is providing a reader. Because I do always have to remind myself, it's like, dude, this is a comic book. Like, you've got to lean into the things that make comic books cool, and like page layouts, super important. And like, sort of what you do with your panel compositions is like key, and it makes or breaks a comic book experience. So I do actually like write down like 4 fight pages, and I'm like, okay, gotta stretch that out. Or like, gotta sort of like winnow it down if there are too many talking head pages. And then some of it's editorial, like with issue 8, where Bobby has dinner with his parents and his time displays self. My editor at the time, Darren Shan, was like, I don't want a fight scene in this. Like, I just want 20 pages of dinner. And I was like, no, people are going to hate this book. No. Like, so I put the pyro fight in the beginning, just to kind of also give it, like, that was my way to be like, previously on Iceman, like, like here's all this context. If you're just picking it up because the Mike Diodato cover, drew you in. And then similarly, like, I challenged myself, like, okay, if this is a talking head issue, how do you still make it visually interesting? And that was how I came up with the idea of like time displaced Bobby, like literally freezing up when it came to seeing his parents. Because I knew what the twist of the issue was going to be, which was that like they wanted to try and like re-raise Bobby in the hopes that like they could have the son that they wanted. So I kind of needed like, okay, well, that's like, that, all right, well, yeah, but like we live in an age where like, there's 20 million twists and turns on a CW show. So like the reader's going to be bored out of their minds. Like, what else do you do to it? And that's kind of that challenging myself. Like, how do you make this visually interesting? Is where I got some of the stuff for that one. Was that appropriate?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. No, that's good. I think one of the things, and your artist on there, I mean, you had a couple, but the guy who did the most was Robert Gale, doing 6 or 8 of the 11 issues, something around there.
Yeah, he ended up doing the last 6. Okay. Bless his soul.
Yeah, I know he had a lot of very interesting visual styles as it went through, especially in the later arcs with Dakin, which is what I kind of wanted to get into next. And I'm sure since you are an active internet person that you've seen people talking. Dakin's a character that people have a lot of opinions on.
Yeah, I didn't know that. BTW just, I could be wrong, but I think it's Daken. And I only say that because that's how Marjorie Liu said it to me when I ran up to her in San Diego and I was like, you help me. So I think it's Daken.
If
but
she thinks
could be
that's the
wrong.
way to do it, then I'm pretty sure she's right, and I'm just the asshole here. So,
Hey, for years I called Magneto Magnetio and I called Venom Venom. I was 5. That was my excuse. But
Venom
hey,
is a
I'm just saying
real word. Like Magneto's also a real word, but it's pronounced different than all both of those ways. Venom's like a thing.
I was 5.
Okay,
I'm
that's
just
fair.
trying to
That's
fill
fair.
Anyway, so yeah, Daken, what was the question?
I don't know if there was a question yet, but you wrote him, at the same time as Tom Taylor was writing him in All New Wolverine, and you definitely gave him a very villainous tint, which for a guy who has literally murdered babies without remorse is not necessarily a bad take on it. So I was curious how you balanced, that take on the character, or how you came to that version where someone else can come to a more anti-hero take on the character.
Well, so the one thing I'll say about the Tom Taylor versus me thing was that I had asked, like, you have to ask about character availability when you're pitching ideas, and they were like, oh, he's going to show up in All New Wolverine, but not for a while. And I didn't do my due diligence after that because I just assumed, like, okay, they'll let me know. Like, and I just thought it'd be like well after my arc with him. And I knew that my arc would end on a redemptive note because I wanted to figure out the most sort of like unexpected and surprising way that those two could kiss without Daken aggressing on Bobby. And speaking of the internet, what I love is like some of the like people who just like really want to make sure this like really want to poo on the book, like they were trying to use that as like me pushing like like rape culture. And I wanted to be like, well, okay, clearly you fools have not read the series because Daken has been trying to hook up with Bobby for like multiple issues, so consent is totally on the table. Anyway, I just thought that was funny, and I wanted to say that out loud. I wanted to defend myself.
You may not want to be reading those people's comments anymore. I don't think that they might have a great head on their shoulders.
I don't usually read a lot of that stuff, but every once in a while you'll like look at something and you'll be like, hey, what is this? Oh, boo, it's Negi, whatever. But so I came up when we were talking about using him in the beginning, the idea was that like here is someone who is everything Bobby's not. Like he's comfortable in his skin, he's super confident, like he doesn't give a damn about anyone. And Bobby gives a damn about everyone to the point where he's like paralyzed when it comes to self-expression. And the goal was like, how do we put these two at odds with each other and really push sort of, like the mutant metaphor of it all. Like, and that's where I started. So like, and we always looked at him as an anti-hero. I think, Daken was getting progressively crankier and crankier, and the seed that was in him was also kind of exacerbating his darker tendencies. And I just kind of, I went with that, and I wanted to treat him a little bit like Damon in the Vampire Diaries, where when you first meet him, you're like, okay, how the hell does the main character end up like wanting to be with this guy? And that's half the fun, is like you just start them at polar opposites and you figure out like what's your long game and how do you get these two to actually like see eye to eye and see value in each other, and how do you make this guy not a complete prick? And I think I just ended it with him being a complete prick, but Bobby like helping him out.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the way you ended it, I was not expecting a callback to him getting resurrected by time travel and the children of Archangel from being Apocalypse that one time. Like that was like I had in the back of my mind that, oh yeah, I know that's continuity, I know that's a thing that's happened. But a lot of people seemed okay to like just move on. You know, it's one of those drop plot threads that never gets pulled back up. So that coming up in your run and being such a significant part of his arc was, I don't know, it's pretty surprising. I enjoyed it as, you know, a continuity nerd.
Yeah, and that came from, you know, again, it's like in part of my research, like I would reach out to writers I had access to, and I reached out to Rick Remender, and I was like, hey, I'm writing Daken into the book. Like, do you have any kind of like advice you want to give me? And same with just like working at Marvel. Like, it's like, hey, I'm like writing this book at Marvel. Like, if you have any feedback or advice, like, I just don't want to fuck it up. And, you know, Rick said like XYZ. And then like also like, you know, I did this thing with Daken and like kind of left it there and no one ever picked it up. Like, make of that what you will. And it took a lot of convincing editorial. I was like, I really like this. I really want to do something with this. I really want to play with that. And I think it'll be rewarding to people who are fans of the character. And it'll be a resolution in a way too. Like, just like I can fix it. Like I can also get rid of that plot thread too. You know, and they didn't like quite immediately, like, you know, they weren't like, yeah, like, yes, bitch, like, do it. But I, you know, once I kind of wrote it out and sort of showed how like it would also kind of bring these two together in a way, like, then they were like, okay, cool. Yeah, go give it a shot. Give it a shot, kiddo. But yeah, I don't know. He's just such a compelling character, and he's had such a rough past that, you know, it makes sense, like, why one day he's on your side and the next day he might emotionally backslide and be kind of a douchebag, and, you know, then the next day kind of have all this heart and compassion. But for anyone listening, I would say, like, chronologically, my Iceman arc takes place, like, you know, a skosh before Tom Taylor's Wolverine arc, if that like clears everything up for people.
Look, all I know is that's now officially going to be in like the Marvel Wikis and everything in the world. You have spoken it into existence, so it shall forever be.
Goody.
No, so you know, you got a chance to write Daken. You got a chance to write a couple other characters in there, but who was a character that you wanted to get a chance to, you know, take a stab at, but was never able to work it into the story you were telling?
I really, really wanted to do something with Emma, but her arc just was not. There was never a good time to kind of like introduce such a powerhouse character into the series. Especially, again, she was just sort of like embroiled in all these like larger macro X-Men and Marvel Universe stories that like they were very protective of how she was being utilized. But I really wanted to do something with that, because that was actually the one sort of like, if I think about Bobby Drake, I think about like when him and Emma get in that huge fight and she's like, you're being a fucking pussy. And he's like, shut up. Like that always stuck with me. And I just thought, okay, like if we're talking about, you know, this lady knowing him better than he knows himself, like she might also know some shit about like his sexual identity and his just, you know, compartmentalization or whatever. And I just really wanted to do something with that, but there wasn't an opportunity. And I have to make peace with that. It's kind of like, you know, when you're working on like a TV show and you can't get that actor for like that episode, and you just have to make do with like, oh, well, this actor's available. It's just weird with comic characters. You don't think that they'd have diva contracts, but
well, if anyone would have, it'd be Emma. That's that's interesting. It's a bit unfortunate, because I think your specific take on Emma would be a good, unique, you know, view of the character who has had a lot of connections with Bobby Drake over the years. So that's
yeah, and it would have been so much fun to just write someone so kind of like confident and I think I'm using this word right, imperious, and like also she's sort of snarky,
Little bit, yeah.
depending on who. Like I love the way like Grant Morrison wrote her. I think Joss Whedon did a good enough job with her. I wanted to kind of prove that like I could nail her voice, and really kind of like get some just like really nasty one-liners out into the book, because I think Bobby ends up like the way I write Bobby is a little bit like Zach Braff and Scrubs, like kind of just like sort of nervous, like clean dad jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as a gay man, like I am capable of like far, far more ruthless dialogue than that. Um, and I got to do a little bit of it with Daken, but not enough, because mainly like a lot of he's all innuendo. Like he wouldn't, he doesn't quite say these lines that like hurt, except for the shit he said to Bobby that made him come out to his parents.
Yeah.
But that's few and far between with that character. Anyway, because he's not a telepath. But yeah, I wish I could have gotten a chance to do something with Emma. And she's also another one of those like morally ambiguous characters that you really can kind of go anywhere with. And the reader will go along for the ride and not question you too much about it.
No, that's yeah, that's cool. I wish we would have got to see it, because it sounds like you've got a good take on the character. So as we wrap up my questions for this, we're going to go to Twitter questions in a second, but had one last question for you on this book. With these 11 issues that you had, what are you the most proud of?
I mean, like at face value, doing it, like that's such a dumb answer. I don't know. It's such a weird book. I'm just so like, it's like, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe it came out, and I can't believe I landed the plane in some regards. I'm really happy with the last issue. I think I just kind of was like, there's a lot of ambition to it, and I don't know if everything is successful, but like in 20 pages, it's like you see a guy go on a date, and it's not even like a successful date, and I resolve that, and then like you see him help someone else come out of the closet. Then you also have these flashbacks that are pretty like super interesting to analyze in the sense of like I told CBR this, and this will all be out by the time this interview's out, but like it's very like metatextual. Like it's all about like the performative identity of like sexual, like the performance of identity. Like it's like, here I am drawing in 6 different styles. Like what does that tell you about like how we can kind of put on masks and perform for people in order to like get the desired reaction. And I just thought that was super ill, and I was so happy that Marvel let me do that, and I had to make a case for it, because they don't love writers like kind of cross pollinating responsibilities, unless you're named like Becky or Jason or Scotty. They're very like, nah, like you're either a writer or you're an artist, and for them to let me do that was super cool. I also love Kevin's cover for that issue. We worked so hard to just try and make it like the coolest, most epic Iceman shot. Like it's like, okay, we only have one more cover. Like what do we need to fit in? And it's like, let's fit everything in. So I would say the last issue just really reflects like everything I wanted to have happen with the series, even his relationship with his parents. And I think I'm super proud of like that they got an arc, and same with Kitty Pryde. Like she had an emotional arc. And even though I took like some beatings for like how I represented her in issue 2, it was to have her, grow and change by issues 4 and 5, like, and for her to show up as a friend. And even with like issue 10 and her being like, oh man, like I'm just trying to be here for you, and like maybe I'm not doing it right, maybe you're not doing it right, but hey, like you want a team, like is that what I'm missing? And I was just proud of all that stuff. But yeah, I guess like issue 11 It's a pretty cool one.
It's great. Like, for people who, if you haven't read anything on this book, pick up issue 11 on Comixology right now. It's my favorite issue of the run. I was so excited to get to take a look at it, and it really, it's a good standalone that distills everything that this run was about. So yeah, go do that, guys. But while you're doing that, we've got a few Twitter questions. We actually have a lot of Twitter questions, and we are not going to get to all of them because there's like 20.
What? Yeah, okay.
Too many. That's far too many. People got very ambitious with this in the 45 minutes that I had this up between starting the interview and this. But no, it's good. So we'll hit some quick hits on this. Luke at Coltreg on Twitter asks, if Bobby can make sentient ice creatures, would those be his ice babies?
Yes. Sure. Oh man. Oh god, power set questions are going to be weird. But yeah, sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, LOL,
Perfect.
yeah.
Genetic Ghost on Twitter asks, was Richter always going to be part of the series, or did that evolve from something else?
That was okay. Wait, let me really answer this and think about how I came up with that. So okay, I guess I can tell this. At first, they told me I had 10 issues. Then they were like, never mind, let's give you 11. And I was like, okay, cool. Because like sales were sort of kind of steadily like going back up or something. I don't know how they make these decisions. But so I suddenly had this 11th issue, and I knew Judah and Bobby were going to break up because I knew I wanted to end the series with Bobby being single. And also like, no, he's not going to move across the country for a guy.
Right. That was very quick.
But well, and you know what? Here, let me tell you this. Like, gay Twitter had my back because gay Twitter knows that, like, that happens. Like, you do some crazy fucking shit the first time you imprint on a guy. I almost moved to Seattle for a guy because, like, again, I just was like, oh, like, there's so much going on with like that whole journey, especially if like it's fraught with like, I didn't come out until I was 30. Like, of course, Bobby would just like say yes to the first thing that feels comfortable. And gay Twitter had my back on that. So thank you, gay Twitter. But anyway, back to the Richter thing. So I thought, okay, you know what I want to do is like, I want to show Bobby like go on a bad date. Like, I want to like, let's do that. Like, I don't think the Marvel Universe has too many of those stories. And that's the beauty of like X-Men is like, it is very soap opera where like people do kind of like, like I feel like everyone's kind of flirted with everyone in the X-Men universe. And I wanted to do that for like the queer X-Men characters. Like, and that's also a real thing with like, I think dating in smaller communities is like you hit a point and you like look at someone and you're like, maybe we should be a thing. And then you go on a date and you're like, maybe we shouldn't be a thing. But so that's where I came up with the Richter idea. And it was so funny that like me trying to like effortlessly create a space where that could happen before New Mutants #1, like just like really, really pissed off the internet. But whatever, in the trade, everything will be fine. But yeah, that's how we met, right? Because
I had one person, and they know who they are, freak out on a Wednesday morning saying, Zach, what's going on with Iceman? I'm really invested in this couple. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look at this. Let's see. And reached out to you, got some comments on it. And yeah, I think end of the day, it worked out real well.
Yeah. They were on a break. Sorry, I had to do the Friends reference. But yeah, and it's like, and that's the great thing too, because like they didn't kiss, they didn't do anything. Like they both just spent the whole time like, waxing and mooning over or pining for their other dudes. So yeah, it all worked out. But it was like this. It was the second arc's version of that Kitty Pryde thing, where like I was just like, yeah, they're gonna be pissed off this week, but in like 3 months, they A, won't care, and B, will be fine with like the decisions I made. Really long answer to a very simple question. Next. Everett
Christensen at Zahurasens asks, How much responsibility or pressure did you feel towards being representative of gay culture? And is there any intersectional gay mutant culture differences you would have liked to explore?
Um, I felt I felt a ton of pressure, but then I also felt like no pressure because I was just kind of I was like, I don't know, like I either have this or I don't, and you know, like you know, you have all the experiences from your past to like set you up for a moment, and you either pull it off or you don't. So I tried not to get too stressed out. And all that being said, you know, like I went to school and I studied writing in college, and um I went to a liberal arts college, so like we were studying a lot of like literary criticism and sort of I'm like losing all my college words because I'm tired, but like I studied the idea, like the notion of representation and the notion of like responsible storytelling. So I felt very confident that like I could be ahead of any blind spots I might have. Um, and then with this character specifically, I just doubled down on what the assignment was, which is like it's a man in his late 20s, early 30s who just came out of the closet. Like, do with that what you will. So for me, I was like, okay, it's totally okay to be safe. It's totally okay to like have sort of like some training wheels in this arc because you know that's where he's at. Like, and you know, and then I can bring in the time displaced Bobby here and there to let the reader know I know that there is a larger culture of like a broader gay experience than just like, oh, woe is me. You know, the thing that makes me different is my narrative shortcoming or whatever, you know. And so I tried my best with the character and where he was at. And then also with the fact that this is a book that um, is like all X-Men books has to be like 90s PG-13. So like, I think that was the thing where I felt put against a wall where it's like there are some gay people that are just like, yo, like I want this to be an X-tube porno because that's my culture. And I'm like, I get that, dude, but this is a comic book where you can't even say bad words or even say the word sex. Like, I can't do that. And then similarly, it's like, oh, and this also has to you know, be accessible for just like a random straight dude who wants to read a really great yarn. So don't bog it down with like this, that, or the other. And, you know, and I just found my way. I don't know. Like there's a lot of coded stuff in there. And I think if I had any, I don't know, I guess it's like, I don't even know if I regret the, how I handled or didn't handle sort of the broader landscape of the the gay community, and the best I could do was sort of just bring in as many of those characters in the series as possible. You know, like that's why Daken became such a bigger picture antagonist. Was like, okay, like yeah, he's he's queer, he's bisexual. His power set kind of makes him problematic because like bisexual the bisexual community tends to like be represented as like morally ambiguous. You can't trust them because like who's to say what they're going to pick tomorrow? And that was like how do I like how do I make this like a positive representation even though I'm using him as a bad guy? I don't know. So yeah, I tried my best. That's all I can say. And then with intersectionality, I didn't stare too hard at that because I don't know, like I I guess I experience a lot of quote unquote intersectionality as like a queer dude and a person of vague color. I call myself ethnic white for being half Persian but having this fucking stupid name. I love my name. Don't self hate, Sina. Um, so I didn't really push myself or challenge myself to like add more or less to that because I just kind of felt like it would show up in the text regardless, given my own experiences. Um, so yeah, that's everything. Yeah.
I think that's a very good academic answer, and I have literally nothing that I can add to that. But moving on, Chad Jeffrey H at Guess Who 621 on Twitter asks, "What are your favorite looks for Iceman?"
Um, as a superhero, I I loved like the chunky John Romita Jr. look, and I would always tell the artist to like do that whenever he's like Hulk
Mhm.
smash angry. I didn't really like his like 80s looks for the most part. I also didn't really like if you look at the way Jim Lee drew him, sometimes it was like he'd be like splashing ice off of himself every once in a while. That was weird. I did love the way Alessandro Vitti drew him as Iceman. Um, where he's like very like shiny. Like I love how Sean Ashmore looked in
Mhm.
Days of the Future Past, like when he would ice up. I thought that was really ill. I do also love like, that like the current costume is like, how come like the rest of him is ice, but like his clothes are still his clothes? Like I liked that. I thought that was funny. And then there is, yeah, I don't know, but then there is like a really cute like value to like he looks essentially like he's in his underwear with an X belt. Um, and then in terms of the fashions, like I would send the artists uh, like Google image search results of like Stephen Yun like streetwear, and like I would send pictures of Tom Holland. No, not Tom Holland. Andrew Garfield. I like Andrew Garfield street style was like my Bobby Drake fashion inspiration. So poor like Alessandro just kept getting these pictures of like him and Emma Stone like running from the paparazzi. Um, so yeah, that's my Iceman
I mean,
fashion
look, I
answer.
think he can borrow from his amazing friend to get his looks. I would believe Bobby would do that.
Hell yeah.
Gerald Danvers at Super Curry Max on Twitter asks, "Was there any ever any inclination to include Opal or her baby in this series, which we discussed earlier from that very interesting series miniseries in the early 2000s?"
No interest. That felt very much like Leave the Past in the
It's a
Past with
weird
her.
series. Yeah, I get that. Like, it's weird that this series is the most
Yeah.
grounded miniseries that Iceman has had, because everything else has been buck wild.
Yeah, I know. And mine had an ice kaiju, but still.
Well, it goes well with the Ice Voltron that he made that one time.
Exactly. Wait, when did he make an ice Voltron?
Oh, did you not? In shit, what was it? Wolverine and the X-Men. At that, he makes an Ice Voltron to fight a bunch of Krakoas.
I have the first 3 trades of that. Maybe I missed that.
Yeah, it's near the end of the run. It's like the second to last one.
Shit.
Yeah, no, he makes. I'm going to send you a picture of this because, as the guy who wrote Iceman, I feel like you owe it to yourself to know that this is a thing that did in fact happen.
I just lost everyone. Everyone is like, boo, you're done. You're out. Good riddance for not knowing that.
Yes, it's definitely a Voltron with an X-Men logo on it.
Shit. I need to see that. Okay, cool. Well, now I learned something new, and now I need a do-over. Someone give me the series again.
Well, speaking of that, the last question that I want to cover, and we got this from a lot of people, but we will choose this one. Daily X-Men Facts at Daily X-Men Facts on Twitter asked a lot of things, but the big thing is, if you got a chance to go on, what would you have liked to do?
So I said this earlier. I really like, the book is always about identity. So I would keep just sort of fluctuating on that. I would, like in my head, the next arc would have been like the trials and errors of leading a team. And then the other thing I thought was like, we're so focused on Bobby's past, like let's focus on his future. And let's also, I was thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like, I don't know, I just thought like it'd be really neat to see what would happen if he had to kind of deal one-on-one with like, these darker versions of his future, and him having this like fear of like what he could become in a bad way. So those were the 2 things I wanted, was to just sort of like show Bobby as a team leader, and then have Bobby really like face like the dark, like the fear of future, like I think that's a thing a lot of grown-ups have to face, and so that's where I would have gone. And then I think I would have pushed more, especially like with Jean back. Like I've said this a few times, it's like I just wanted to do a therapy issue. Like I just wanted to so badly do the X-Men version of like therapy, where like he goes in his head, and you see some shit, you know what I mean? Like I really wanted that, but hey, that's what the future's for. Maybe, there'll be other opportunities to hopefully write him, maybe not in a series, but in a team book or whatnot. We'll see.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, the one thing I have spinning out of this, and I'm sure people will be remiss because I've seen them continuously ask this. Did you have a pitch for that team? Like, did you have, even if it wasn't going to be a thing and you knew that, did you have like the guys that you wanted in mind for that?
Yeah, and like page 1 of issue 11 is sort of a hint at like who I would use.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like I love Heidi. I love her so much, and I also think she's a really great character to have in Bobby Drake's orbit because she is capable of so much pain and violence, but she believes herself better than that, and she believes she's capable of being something beautiful. So I would have really liked to have spent more time with those two characters, and similarly, like that girl Michaela that I introduced, I would have loved to have like really let her kind of be the comedic backbone for a team, and then play around with some like Generation X characters I loved, um and it was just funny because it's like when I did think about that team, I was like, well, who would accept like being a subordinate to Iceman? Like it's like okay, Wolverine can't be on that team, you know what I mean? Jean Grey can't be on that team. Like Bishop is certainly not going to be like he'll be like, fool, I saved the future. Like, no, you're not telling me what to do. I mean, or maybe that would be a great teammate to have. Never mind. Do you hear this, internet? Please, like, start now. X-Men Ice hashtag or whatever. You're hearing this team. I'm just making it up as I go along. But oh, that is funny. That Bishop would actually be a really great subordinate for Bobby Drake.
I think it'd be an interesting dynamic because they were on the same team, on the Gold team in the early '90s when Bishop did not want to play nice with anyone. So he's someone who's gotten to be right there with Bobby as the jokester. Bobby is the comic relief on the team, and him already trying to struggle with giving up leadership stuff to someone like Storm, who is very good at being a leader and a very very regal person. So to see that balance against Bobby, I think that'd be a very fascinating duo.
Maybe I'll make like I can't do this. I'll get in so much trouble, but I'm like, maybe I'll make like a little weird zine that I like hand print and like only take with me to like, or hand make and only take at cons where I like, I do all these like fantasies and stuff. Like here's the missing issue 12. Like, I don't know. I won't do that. That's illegal, but it's funny to talk about on podcasts.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who would make unauthorized X-Men zines. That's such a crazy thing to do. Just a quick editor's note here. Pre-orders for the Xavier Files zine start this week.
That's like the backbone of being an X-Men fan. Like it's like Marvel has to be chill about that. The same way like Disney has to be chill about like Star Wars fans kind of creating their own merchandise. It's like you've got to let the culture have its freedom because it's only healthy for everyone.
No, that's awesome. And I think that that wraps up this portion of it. So Sina, thank you so much for being on and talking about Iceman. It's a fun series. Sad to see it go.
Thank you, and I am too, but I think I ended it as best as I could. And for anyone listening who didn't check the series out, it's all done. You should go. You should read it because it's a complete story. There's a complete narrative arc, and there's some really cool art in the book. Yeah, in the book, whatever. And I'm proud of it, and you can't take that away from me.
No, that's good. So this has been Battle of the Atom. Everything associated with Battle of the Atom can be found at XavierFiles.com. That's also where I write weekly articles about different X-Men characters. Last week it was Pixie. I haven't looked far enough ahead to write who this next week is, but it's definitely written down somewhere. So that'll be exciting. We also have the weekly article. I already said weekly articles. I'm an idiot. The Battle of the Atom stuff goes up every Monday. You can also follow me on Twitter at Xavier Files. And just wanted to throw another shout out to everyone who supports this show on Patreon. It's how we fund everything we do in the Xavier Files media empire. So if you go over to patreon.com/Xavier Files, you can donate. There's different reward tiers, including getting a story of your choice put onto our big old list ranking every X-Men story ever, and we will craft the entire episode around your pick. We have some very interesting ones coming up soon, including an Ultimate Spider-Man story and a story that is literally just the layout of the X-Mansion. So we got some fun stuff that we're going to be doing in the near future. Adam is also part of this, and I forget his Twitter hashtag thing because I just type in Adam when I want to talk to him. It's at Arthur Stacy. I should know that. We've been friends for a while. He's going to be back next week. Next week we also have Zach Thompson and Lonnie Nadler from Cable coming on to talk about their upcoming series. It's going to be a ton of fun. Until then. Last but not least, Sina, thank you so much for writing this book, coming on. We really appreciate it. And, it'd be perfect if you didn't finally name an X-Men character with my first name and then also make him kind of a jerk man. But I appreciate everything except for that in the book.
Apologies.
No, it happens. It's a very common name.
Yeah, and I have a good friend who is also Asian named Zach, and I was like, hey man, I don't think you're like this. I don't think you're a tool. And he was like, it's okay, man. And I was like, okay, cool. So sorry to anyone named Zach.
All the Zachs of the world, I think I can speak for all of us, can forgive you. But until
you heard it here.
You heard it here. Until next time, guys, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!